Hey guys, I chose Padlet as my Module 8 tool here. And to start off with the philosophy of online teaching, I think a lot of the components kind of resemble much of what my traditional setting kind of looks like. Kind of as Rice mentioned in Chapter 2, there are about five attributes that represent a foundation of what I truly believe in. Um, And the first one starts off with student autonomy or independence. I think it's important to have an engaging classroom with students. Um, Not only is the teacher developing collaborative skills, but also the students are. As a teacher, I'm providing authentic assessment for them in the ways that they can kind of build their knowledge. And I want them to grow and develop their 21st century skills in today's world. So with the Padlet here, you can see the arrows that go from one to the next to follow along here. So the first one talks about student autonomy. So to be an effective teacher, I need to provide my students with the opportunity to take leadership to become independent thinkers. This means that they're encouraged to take the initiative in their own learning by having choices. When I give choices, they can explore ideas on their own. They can explore ideas with each other so that some ideas might be new to them and some might be familiar to them, but they're able to reflect on those concepts that either worked out really well or might not have worked out so well in the end. But to provide for my students to become autonomous thinkers, I need to have them using some type of discussion forum. I really think it's important that they do something where they can kind of develop um, their conversations with peers so that they can really dig deeper into the content that's going on. And this kind of allows myself to personalize their learning, what works well, what doesn't work well in each of their cases. Moving on to the next part there with the active participation. Um, I think it starts with myself as the teacher. When I establish a nurturing environment where my students feel connected and empowered to participate, they're going to take risks. And when I have a culture of learning that is established in the traditional classroom or an online classroom, it allows the students to provide feedback to each other so that they can really, work well together. And I think that again, discussion forums are a great way to do this, especially even in an asynchronous setting where they can kind of review each other's videos or discussions so that they can really kind of take a deeper meaning in that case. And I think Flipgrid that I used before is a really good resource because um, they get to see the videos that each other are developing, and then they take it to the next level. Being able to kind of give them that choice of who to respond to and what to respond about, kind of models that idea of becoming an active learner in that case. Thirdly, a classroom really is a social construct, um, and they always need to have the ability to collaborate with each other, as well as myself. So through the collaboration process, there's a greater sense of well-being, more engagement, and even hopefully some improved cooperation through that process. So it really allows my students to kind of bounce ideas off each other, and they get to challenge each other in ways that they didn't think about before. And I think a great synchronous communication tool that I have really taken a likening to in a lot of what we've done so far is that the breakout rooms in our lessons that we're allowed to try out, or the chats, because I think it allows the teacher to kind of see what the students are developing together. How are they collaborating with each other, and then allows the teacher kind of to provide that feedback when it's necessary in each case. And if I scroll down here a little bit for you, we move to the authentic and 21st century skills here. It's important in any setting really to promote a process of learning rather than having an end product all the time. It's not just about, okay, we're going to do this direct instruction and then have an assessment at the end. It's really about how are they learning along the way? Are they working independently and developing their skills? Are they collaborating together? it kind of is more about a process rather than always getting to the end assessment. So I think students really need to experience um, realistic world applications and have connections to their own lives, especially in the 21st century. Um, my content of math is so heavily involved in everybody's life that it's everywhere that we look, and we just don't realize and how it can be used each and every day. So when they do these authentic assessments, being able to do a lot of hands-on activities, um, they develop skills. They're going to develop skills such as self-reflection. They're going to be able to have some teamwork ability. They're going to have problem-solving skills, and they're going to become the critical thinkers that we want them to be in the 21st century. So, as the teacher, one of my goals is to provide my students with hands-on learning. Um, and examples are very similar to what Rice talked about in her text about flipped classrooms, and just in the last module, Model 7, that we talked about with flipped classrooms. So I want them to explore in the classroom setting and challenge each other each and every day so that they're not just making themselves better, but they're making each other better too. As we move into some of the questions about developing some synchronous and asynchronous and collaborative tools, I think, as a current math teacher, there's so many ways to really teach the content. In a synchronous manner, it can be as simple as just doing direct instruction through a lecture, whether that's online or in a traditional setting. But it's not as engaging as it really could be. So, I start off my classroom this year really with a lot of direct instruction. Here's the content, here's a little bit of work together, here's your homework. But I think towards the halfway point of the school year, as I learned that students weren't learning the best that they could, I changed it up so that they could have those collaborative tools used in a traditional setting. But I think it also works well in the online setting because they get the problem solved together, and they receive that instant feedback, which is important in a synchronous learning setting. Um, and from each other's perspective, they talk about the social presence model a little bit in interaction intensity, in the ways that, how involved are you in the lesson? Are you more of a bystander, just letting other people take part, or are you more into the whole collaborative part, which I think is what I'm moving towards? Um, and I think it's very similar to what we had to do with our own lessons, that we had to showcase. And I thought this approach worked really well in certain areas that allowed the students to be able to either use the chat system if necessary or use the breakout rooms, and then they could work at the same time. So students can ask us questions in that very moment, and then you can provide instant feedback, which is a really important part of the synchronous part of it. But if we move to the next part of the asynchronous part, um, this sometimes also might work better in certain cases. I really enjoy the reflective piece of this, and students have more time to develop the more meaningful responses and create a community of learners, just like the social presence model talks about. You know, in our own class, what we're doing right now here, we respond to each other, we pull in outside information and bring that in. That's something that you want to bring into your own classroom, I think, a lot, because it allows them to bounce ideas off each other and really develop a better discussion in the end. So I think some great tools, collaborative tools that could be used, is the Edpuzzle idea and the Flipgrid, because it allows students to work at their own pace. They get to watch the videos at home in a flipped classroom setting, and they can be able to kind of come into the classroom and ask some of those questions that they might have in that case. And then we have the last two areas here. Some differentiated learning styles, excuse me. I think that it's important to provide these styles for all of our students, and to know who our students are. We can't just jump into a classroom and say, okay, I expect you to do X, Y, and Z. You want to get to know who they are, build that relationship kind of with them in that case. So in the connection with the UDL design, um, students have to be engaged in their learning. Using collaborative groups through chats or breakout rooms. I know I go back to that piece a lot, but I really think it's an important piece of the online environment that kind of allows students to showcase their own abilities. Um, and again, they develop the skills of reflection, and it fosters a community of learners in each case. And from our own experiences and representation um, of the UDL design, it's important that we are altering our own documents so that we offer those alternatives to our students. So some very basic things could be, the color contrast for students, or using the alt text for students, how important those can really be for all of our students. Um, and in any setting, to have an ongoing means of communication, um, being able to respond to students in a proper manner allows our students to feel comfortable and approach the teacher whenever they may need it. An email, something as simple as that, can really go a long way to really feel um, or allow the students to feel connected in the classroom. And lastly, I think the biggest part that we talked about is kind of our ahas and our questions that we still might have. But I think one thing that really just struck my mind going into this class is that I didn't know what to expect what an online setting would be. Is it just a teacher and a computer and a student? What really was the important part of it? But what I realized is that online teaching is very similar to what a traditional setting is. Um, Many of the skill sets are identical, but we just put it into different situations, such as the INACOL standards, and it's very similar to Danielson's domain. They're pretty much the same idea, just in different realms almost. Secondly, I think the amount of types of online classroom settings that there are available is kind of staggering. There's so much to kind of being able to look at and say, okay, what works best with your own philosophy. And just this last module when we talked about flipped classrooms, it really kind of caught my eye, and realizing that you kind of have the best of both worlds. You're able to kind of teach those students those independent skills, being able to work at their own pace, but also bring them into the classroom, that whether it's online or in a traditional setting, and have them work together, being able to have that authentic assessment, so that they can really better themselves and understand that, again, we're looking for a process, not a product. And it kind of goes into the idea of the synchronous versus asynchronous learning, because they both have their own styles that benefit each and every student. Some students are going to learn better by face to face. Some students are going to learn better, with an online setting or working at their own pace. I think it's really intriguing that with an online setting you can do both, and reach every individual that's kind of out there. Um, and I think the biggest question that I still have kind of in my mind, and this just comes from all like the readings and the data that's out there, I think with the research, is that um, with the amount of students who could be moving towards an online system, what is the chance that one day we completely move away from face-to-face interaction in a classroom? What's the chance that the teacher is working from home and just streamlining in that case? So obviously could probably be way down the line, but what's the chance that could happen, in our own lifetime? So I think that's something to kind of think about and wonder in this case. Thanks, guys.